Good morning. Today is Monday, December 11th, 2023. Every Chanukah is special. This Chanukah is more special. Because this Chanukah, while we might not feel like celebrating because of the war in Israel, this Chanukah we need specifically right now. So let's start with food. What food do you eat in honor of Chanukah? Yesterday I shared with you that it's interesting. The only food that is mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, as a custom to eat on Chanukah is dairy food, cheese or other dairy food. Many of us have either latkes or sufganiyot. Some of us have both. Those are not just delicious foods. Each one of them is Pirsume Nisa. It is publicizing the miracle. Dairy foods, as I mentioned yesterday, publicizes the miracle of the war. As we say in our prayers, Rabim biad ma'atim, that a great gigantic army of the Assyrian Greeks was defeated by this small group. I told you the story of one woman yesterday, Yehudit. The story of the Maccabees, a small family, a small group that overcame unbelievable odds to triumph in battle. And we have dairy foods to remember that, to remember the heroism of Yehudit and what she did. And the other foods are foods that are cooked in oil, fried in oil. In northern areas in Europe, they had potatoes, so they fried potatoes. In southern areas, Sephardic lands, they didn't have potatoes. They had other types of foods. They made donuts, sufganiyot. So sufganiyot and latkes, they're both publicizing the miracle of the oil. There was only enough oil for one night, and it lasted for 8 days. There is a question that I have. I do not have an answer to this question, so if you have an answer, I'm open to it. Given that there are two miracles of Chanukah, and that is without question, why is it that in our prayer, the Al Hanisim prayer that we add, which we talked about before, we only mention the miracle of the military war. We do not mention the miracle of the oil. And why is it that in the Talmud, when the Talmud discusses Chanukah, it emphasizes the miracle of the oil and barely even mentions the miracle of the military battle? Why is it that one is emphasized in one place and the other is emphasized in the other place? I do not have an answer to that question. But what I want to share this morning, which is partially based on an essay written by Rav Aharon Lichtenstein, is that while it may seem that there is some kind of competition between these two miracles, in fact, they are integrated. There is an intrinsic connection between these two apparently separate and different miracles. And because of that, the essential message of Chanukah, which is particularly needed now, this year, today, is that what appears to be a deep distinction between these two miracles needs to be integrated into one. The military battle, war, it had a wide scope. At that time, the entire land of Israel was engulfed in war. And it involved everybody. As the Talmud says, when Jews are in danger, everyone is required to help defend the Jewish people, men, women, whoever is able to help. And of course, it goes without saying, war is violent, it's physical, it's dangerous. People lose their lives in war, God forbid. People lose their humanity, God forbid. And of course, we see the same exact thing in Israel today. Almost 400,000 soldiers are fighting, protecting Israel. And they're in the south and the north and the middle. They're all over. And of course, the actions they have to do. They are physical. They are violent. That's what war requires. The miracle of the oil relates really only in the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, and really only relates to the Kohen Gadol, to the high priest, who was the one who would light the menorah every day in the Beit HaMikdash. And the oil that had to be used had to be the highest level, highest quality, shemen zayis zach, the purest, most refined, high quality olive oil. It was so limited in scope. It was just one place, one person. And that spiritual part of the oil, the menorah, it was separated from the physical. It was in a different chamber, a different type of place. It was untouched, literally untouched. That's why it had to have the seal of the Kohen Gadol, the stamp of the high priest, that indicated that no one else had even touched it. And so if you think about these two miracles at the time of Hanukkah, you're really thinking about two very different types of people. And I think we can recognize even today that among Jews, there are different types of people, two very different types of people. There are some people who tend toward the physical. They can build, they can make, they can do. And then there are others who tend towards the spiritual. They can think, they can be, they can appreciate. Yes, of course, there are some who overlap. But many will fall on one or the other side. And here's the story of Hanukkah. There are two miracles, because the truth is, both are needed. And the truth is, both must be connected to each other. We need shemen zayis zach. We need the highest, most pure olive oil for service and worship of God in the most holy place. We need the most pure spirituality. We need prayer. We need Torah study. We need introspection. And we need those people who are willing to fight, who are willing to build, who are willing to fix, who are willing to be involved in mundane society. Either without the other will fail. And what we have learned, especially over the past year, and that's why this lesson is so important to us right now. What we have learned is that we are best when these are not two separate, segregated societies, each one living in their own neighborhood. That has been disastrous for the Jewish people, especially over the last year. We need to bring them together, preferably within the same person. And that is precisely what the Chashmonaim understood. And it was not obvious. In fact, it was controversial because remember, the Chashmonaim, Yehuda Maccabee, and his brothers and their family, they were Kohanim. They were priests. The Ramban says, Nachmanides says, you know that in the aftermath of the Chanukah story, there was initiated the Chashmonaim rule, the dynasty, the kingdom of the descendants of Matisyahu. The Ramban says what they did was wrong. They should not have become kings. They were given the role as Kohanim. A Kohen should not be a king. He should be spiritual. Let the king be from somewhere else. You need a different talent for that. That's what the Ramban says. The Ramban says, keep the Kohanim in the Beis HaMikdash. Let the fighters become from the fighters, let the rulers come from the rulers, and let the priests stay where the priests are supposed to stay. That's what the Ramban says. Okay. I'm not disagreeing with the Ramban, but Matisyahu and his family saw it differently. They saw that what was needed to repair their society, and I am saying to you, it is clear that it is what we need to repair our society today, our Jewish, our Israeli society today, is the bonding of spiritual and physical. And that is expressed in the two miracles they help bring about. And that those two disparate miracles are bonded together in one holiday. I've shared with you before this story of Rabbi AMital, who not only taught this lesson, but who lived it in his life. And there was a point in his life when he went into the government and he was offered the position of minister. So the others around the table said to him, well, we assume, Rabbi AMital, that you would like to be the minister of religion because you're such a great rabbi. You, of course, would be the appropriate person to lead the ministry of religion. And Rabbi AMital said, if you don't mind, no, I'd like to be the minister of health. Because according to my Torah values, what I can contribute, what I think is the highest priority in Jewish law, is to make sure that people are healthy, to persuade enough funding for people's health and safety. That's the area that I want to contribute to. Chanukah is crucial to us today more than ever because it teaches us what does it mean to be a religious Jew, especially in our time. It means Shemen Zayis Zach, the purest oil at the highest level, the purest spirituality, Torah, mitzvos, prayer at the highest level. And in the same person, Yehudit, the work of a people and a land and a state, and fighting if necessary. That's the definition of the religious Jew that we need today. And I want to make it clear, when I refer to military and spiritual, I am understanding this in the widest possible sense. Because when I say military, yes, I mean going to the army, risking your life. It is not right that the entire burden and risk of life is only on there's a segment of society that is exempted from the fear that all the other mothers and wives have. Will my son, will my husband come back? It is not right that burden is not shared equally. I've shared this with you many times before. But that also involves work in its general, widest meaning, contributing to society, sharing all of the burdens of the needs of a state, of a modern state today in Israel. And yes, of course, the spirituality that I speak of course, learning Torah at the highest level, prayer, pure. But also, it refers to the oneness of the Jewish people. It refers to the feeling of connection of every single group, not only those who are like me, but every single Jew. That is also part of the spirituality that we need today. So Daniel Gordis, in a recent article, phrased it this way. He said, Chanukah is like a coin that has two sides, a military and a spiritual side. And he writes that there are a lot of people who they've always been in the spiritual side. They're not so comfortable with the military side. I don't like to talk about war. I don't like to talk about, I'm not connected with guns and fighting, and let me concentrate on the spiritual side. There was enough oil for one day. It lasted 8 days. Wow, that's amazing. Let's have sukkaniot. Let's have latkes. Let's celebrate that. God thought about the Jewish people. That's my connection to Chanukah. The battles, the fighting, cutting off heads, I don't feel so comfortable with that part. I'd rather leave that to the side. I want to stick to the latkes. But he writes that those people need this year specifically to acknowledge that sometimes we need to fight. It is a last resort. We realize the harm it comes to us. You know, I quoted the other day one of the mothers who was praying for her son to come back. I didn't include this quote, but it's appropriate here. She said, I pray that my son comes back, and I pray that my son does not have to kill anybody while he's in war, because he will not be the same afterwards. But we have to acknowledge it. We need military victories now. And we are davening to Hashem, we're praying, we're doing mitzvos, asking Hashem, and we're relying on our tremendous heroes, young men and women, for a military victory, because we all know that without a military victory, Jews will not be safe in Israel or anywhere else in the world. And there's nothing to be ashamed of, to realize that we need a military victory, that we need the strong army, that we need to win. The Chashmonaim needed it then. There would have been no Chanukah without the military victory, without Yehudit doing what she did. And we need it right now. And even though there may have been people in the past who would say, you know what, I'm not so comfortable with that part of it. This year, Chanukah says to them, you need to get on board. We need to fight. We need to fight hard. We need to support our troops, and we need to win. And then there's the other side of the coin. There are people who are more comfortable with the more physical part of things. Sure, I'll join the army. Sure, I'll build a country. I'll do what's necessary to create a state. But this talk about God, this talk about mitzvos, I'm not so connected to that. I don't feel it. I don't believe it. I don't do it. The truth is that we also need spiritual renewal today in Israel and around the world, and we are seeing it. I'm sure you've seen all the pictures of big Hanukkah menorahs in Gaza. I assure you saw, like I saw, soldiers lighting a Hanukkah menorah on a tank. To be able to have the military strength combined within the same people as the spiritual strength, that's the message of Hanukkah. And that's why this Hanukkah is different than every other Hanukkah, because it has a message for every Jew. Your Jewish identity and practice, whatever it is valuable, and it is meaningful, and it is needed for the Jewish people. And your Jewish identity and practice, whatever it is incomplete without my Jewish identity and practice, which is different, and without his, and without hers, and without theirs. We cannot afford to continue living in silos. Haredi, secular, left, right. We cannot afford it spiritually, and we cannot afford it militarily. Staying in our silos will, God forbid, get us all killed. God forbid. So these two miracles of Hanukkah join together within one society. It comes at just the moment when we need it most. When we need to hear the connection of the two miracles of Hanukkah. Because it is the only way we will not only survive this war, but flourish after. Only if we can combine both of these miracles into one society. My friends, I wish you a good day. Hopefully a happy Hanukkah. And I look forward to seeing you soon in person.